Welcome back to the program. And as we kickstart our conversation today, reflect not a little dust has been raised by the CBN's directive to banks to charge 0.5% levy on cybersecurity. And of course, if you look at that space, it's a vibrant one. A lot is happening, positive and negative. And there has in fact been a prediction there'll be a surge in cybersecurity threats this year. You speak of possible attacks to government's online assets, employment benefit scams, just to mention a few. So perhaps there is a need, for to tackle cybercrime. But the question on the lips of many is this the time for government to levy a cybersecurity charge on Nigerians? So joining us to have that conversation, we have two gentlemen who join us virtually, starting with Mr. Jude Izinegbe, who is a digital transformation consultant. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Izinegbe, who joins us from our Abuja studio. And we also have joining us Dr. Bilyaminu.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. We also have Dr. Bilyaminu Romo, a senior lecturer, computer science, University of East London. Dr. Romo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So before we dive really deep into this conversation, perhaps the good place to start, which is one of the valid questions I believe asked by our guest yesterday, is it charged anywhere in the world? So help us understand what would be best practice. So is there a cybersecurity levy that is charged on global citizens, to tackle cybercrime? Dr. Romo, I'm starting with you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important question to ask. The likes of UK models when it comes to taxations or levies, there is no any charges when it comes to electronic money transactions. Of course, there is 20% VAT on all transactions when it comes to digital product, and also that consists intangible and tangible digital asset. However, in Nigeria, why consider a levy on individual instead of targeting companies' net profit, similar to Nigeria's Police Trust Fund Act? And again, the companies actually, especially those benefiting from large bases, for example, may have greater capacity to contribute financially, addressing the issues like cybersecurity.
So just before I go to our next guest, help us understand, so how does a government situate, what approach really does government adopt to tackling cybercrime, either through fundraising?
The UK government has a national treasury, and the national treasury is the main source of government funding, allocating money to various departments and initiatives, including focus on cybersecurity. So, for example, there is a national cybersecurity program, which is a government initiative with a dedicated budget address a wide range of cybersecurity priorities. And also, this budget is drawn upon funds initiated, allocated by the treasury. But in this case, as I've mentioned, if the government is actually trying to source for funds to address cybersecurity, I think they actually need to look at different avenues where they should target and actually generate those revenues to address the issue of cybersecurity threat.
Thank you. Let me come to you now, Dr. Izinegbe. Perhaps you may want to react to what Dr. Romo has said, but does that preclude, any government to adopt another approach that is a departure from what is done in other climes?
Thank you very much. In line with what Dr. Romo just said, one thing I know is cybersecurity is not crowd-funded, right? So within our climb here, this is the first time Nigerians are hearing about a cybersecurity levy. It's the first time we're hearing about paying for the protection of transactions. The question begs, prior to this time, how have the banks been securing transactions? Perhaps that has to be reconsidered, because when you come out to say Nigerians should pay for cybersecurity of transactions, it's kind of tell Nigerians to be wary of the banks, because it then means that the banks are not well equipped to protect transactions. You know, so the office of the NSA has to look at this again and probably come up with a better approach to it. Yes, we know there is a 2015 act for this, and there was a circular that even came out way back 2018, I think. You know, so that has to be looked into again. Because coming at this time to say Nigerians should pay a 0.5% for cybersecurity levy, does it then mean that the banks are now not able to provide effective cybersecurity protection on transactions that are going on? There are many questions that these have erupted, that this has brought to the fore. Is it that the banks are not secure? Is it that the NSA is the organization or the institution that is providing security for banking transactions? What's the duty of NITDA? Because we know that to a large extent, the Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency is tasked with the duty of cybersecurity and information technology administration all over the country. So why is this directive coming from the office of the NSA? Is there something Nigerians need to know? Is there a threat on the infrastructure of Nigerian banks? Is there a threat to our national treasury? What exactly is going on that this kind of levy is coming up at this point in time? Another question that follows this is that the banking transaction levy, operational levy, is about 0.3%. So why is there a cybersecurity levy that is over and above the transactional levy that Nigerians have been paying? Mind you, we have many other payments that Nigerians have been paying, SMS charges, and all there are just so many. So at this time is an extra burden on Nigerians, the MSMEs. These are people that are just trying to make a living. So if you come up with multiple charges, it's going to dampen the business climate in the country. That's why there's this agitation. So we know that there are some people that want to go for a protest, but before a protest is done, I think there should be a dialogue for proper understanding between the office of the NSA, the CBN that the circular came from, and perhaps NITDA. And this will help Nigerians to be at peace.
All right, so let's dig deep. Let me go back to our guest on this particular issue. One of the concerns Nigerians are raising is, just like it's been said, is the issue of multiple taxation. That's the way Nigerians see it. I don't know how it is managed in other climes, because when we look at the Nigerian budget, one of the major chunk of our budgets goes to defense. And I know that the NSA is all part of the defense infrastructure. I'm sure the NSA as well has some budget to itself. I can't quote the exact figure now. Why do they now need this, quote unquote, as he said, some sort of crowdfunding through levy? Doctor, it's for you. Dr. Romo, that's for you.
Thank you. I think what we need to actually also look at and consider here is that foreign digital companies operating in Nigeria have paid over 1.3 trillion naira in taxes. Is that not sufficient enough to address the cybersecurity threat? And the government should provide cybersecurity risk data to researchers to inform legislation and also understand if there is any significant cyber threat level currently facing the country. There hasn't been any headlines or any news that actually suggests or indicate there is a cyber threat in Nigeria since during the election, when the former minister actually comes out publicly and mentioned that there is a cyber security threat, and now imposing this levy on individuals where certain population doesn't even have access to 3G or even electricity, whereas companies are paying taxes, and this is just a corporation tax, 1.2 trillion naira. This would actually have a potential negative impact on levies, because that would hinder Nigerian climate change vision and commitment by incentivizing cash transaction. And again, when it comes, if you look at also the digital poverty and financial exclusion gap, this also may be widened significantly, particularly for the unbanked population. And of course, in some other countries, for example, here in the UK, the UK government actually provide incentive for contractors payment to promote financial inclusion and efficiency. And the overall goal is that it's important to balance revenue generation with a fostering digitally inclusive and secure Nigeria. So if you also, likewise, if you compare the Nigerian mobile market, there is over 122.5 million internet users, according to data report as of January 2003. And there is mobile connection exceeding 100% of population, suggesting multiple subscriptions per person, whereas compared to UK, over 83 million mobile connection, according to Uswitch. If you look at the taxes paid by these digital companies, which is over 44 million pounds, compared to the population of mobile users in Nigeria, why the government could not impose that levy on digital companies' net profits? I think this is something that needs to actually, the legislations need to actually ensure that a proper operations when it comes to spending public money are actually being appropriated judiciously.
Let me go to Mr. Zinegwe on this particular one. For those in the know, they've been doing their calculations, and they are estimating that about 3 trillion naira is going to be accruing to that particular purse, as far as this 0.05 or 0.5, whatever percentage it is, if it's undertaken annually. And I think about 40% is to be sent to the NSS office. But we know that this is an issue of security, so all of the details of how expenditure goes may not be reeled out to the public. How can we manage transparency and avoid misappropriation if eventually it is implemented? Because it's key at the end of the day. It's our public money. Mr. Zinegbe, it's for you.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Geoffrey. One thing about security votes and expenditure when it comes to security, it's a big challenge because sometimes you don't want to make that public. And that's why we're a bit concerned, because cybersecurity activities are not what you make public. And that was where, personally, I felt a bit uneasy when we see this kind of circular, because when these monies are now being remitted, you will not expect the government to come tell Nigerians publicly how these funds are being disbursed, what they are to be used for, because we will now be exposing our national security to the public. That's why I feel the best approach would have been an internal kind of communication where it's not pushed down, the levy is not pushed down to Nigerians. Okay, let's just take a simple transaction, for instance. Before you even get to the bank, if you're making an online transaction, it runs through the telcos. So how do the telcos secure their networks? Are we going to expect a telecom cybersecurity levy in the near future? Because it passes through the telcos before it gets to the bank, right? So if we now start asking for the breakdown of the disbursement of funds, most likely we're not going to get anything. Nigerians are not going to get information on the disbursement of the cybersecurity funds when that happens. So it runs into trillions of naira, but you and I know that nobody's going to get information on that. That is the more reason why this shouldn't have even come up in the first place. The communication should have been more internal from the other levies, other payments, other taxes that have been going on. Perhaps a percentage from there should have been voted for this purpose. Because on one hand, over the years, we'll be talking about cashless policy. On the other hand, we are bringing about a levy, a taxation, a payment that is now going to discourage cashless policy. Already on the streets of Nigeria, people are saying they're going to keep their funds from the bank. People are not going to do any form of transfer. So the MSMEs that do daily transactions, transfer from here to there, sales that are going on, even up to the large enterprises, everybody is going to feel this heat. So there has to be a review because, like you asked me just now, asking for a breakdown on the transaction or the disbursement of these funds, nobody's going to get it. You and I know that for real.
You know, it's a very interesting conversation, really, and it begs a lot of questions, and we're trying to put as much as we can through, particularly to help governments shape their policies. Fine, this went through the National Assembly, you know, a certain senator presented it, and it went through first to third reading in 2 months. It was passed eventually, and the president appended his signature. So it is law at this point, but that doesn't preclude the fact that laws can be amended, particularly because laws are made for people and not people for the laws. So let me come to Dr. Romo, because I was looking through the U.S. and I saw that President Joe Biden is planning to budget, what, $13 billion investment in cybersecurity. That's for the coming year. And it speaks to how countries are approaching cybersecurity these days, because we know how big it is now. We're literally building our societies on the web, you know, on the web of things, on, you know, digital platforms, on the cloud. AI is playing a major role. So that's really the present and the future. So there needs to be funding. And you've talked about how you think the government can fund. But if we want to also perhaps compete on the global scale to a certain level, we'll need a lot more funding. I think all of you have alluded to the fact that there are cybersecurity threats, but the question is how to raise the funds. So if we want to compete adequately, where else must we get the funds from? I need you to reiterate that.
Thank you very much. I think this is also a very important thing to consider, because for example, here in the UK government have a funding for cybersecurity research. And some of the key funding sources include the National Cybersecurity Program and the UK Research and Innovations, notably the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Councils, that funds universities, businesses to actually ensure practical solutions are being developed and also ensure that they are put in place to support businesses when it comes to carrying out their businesses digitally. However, in Nigeria, we do have cybersecurity framework. We also have institutions that actually budget, that actually include all these aspects in their budget. But one key question also to actually ask is that why do we have cybersecurity framework, but that actually lacks practical solutions to be actually put in place through research grant, collaboration, partnership with academia, industry, and public sector to ensure that at least the government have a robust framework when it comes to cybersecurity risk assessment and sharing framework when it comes to gathering data to enable researchers actually make an informed research to benefit key decision makers as well as legislations. There is lack of practical solution actually to support, especially when it comes to compliance, because even with the cybersecurity framework that is in place, again, there is no any practical solution. For example, there is no any software being provided, for example, to small businesses, indigenous software product or solution to support businesses to ensure that the government is actually doing something with all these taxes, with all this budget that they have put in place, with the idea of actually addressing the issue of cybersecurity. So there is huge gap to actually consider. And I think funding method when it comes to issuing research grants to universities, academic centers of excellence, innovation centers, to focus on core technologies, which include human factors, critical infrastructure protections, when it comes to even importation of hardwares that we use in our telecoms industry, not just in telecoms industry. That includes also the software that we use, especially in the public sector, to ensure that we have practical solutions that ensure those software and hardware or equipment are actually being checked for compliance. Because if we don't address this root cause, especially by having this funding research to ensure that there is a proper way of actually implementing those, then we will still go back to the same situation,
Right.
regardless of how many millions or trillions of nairas you can generate through levies.
Right. Let me go to Mr. Ezenegbe now. He's raised a vital point around research, whether we're really owning this thing beyond just, the levies and all. But I want to backtrack a bit because the law, it's important to talk about this law. It's said to have emanated from the amendment of the Cybercrimes Prohibition and Prevention Act 2015. So this the amendment bill was presented on the floor of the Senate by Senator Buba Umar Shehu Wednesday, 18th of October 2023. That's Mr. Ezenegbe. The first reading, that's when we saw the first reading of that particular amendment. And 2 months after, it had got to the third reading and it was passed. So there are people who are a bit suspicious about how this bill went, the amendment, how it went in the first place. So I just want to put it out there, particularly to the digital community in Nigeria. Did we get any word on this bill? Were we invited at any point? Because eventually it was taken to the ICT and National Security and Intelligence Committee. So was there any word or chatter that you heard about this amendment?
Well, to a large extent, we didn't hear word of this. We didn't get wind of this until it was passed into law, and we saw it first on the 5th of May, 6th of May, I think. That was the first time it became public. And for reasons best known to the National Assembly, this was kept within the confines of the National Assembly and the NSA's office. But now that it has become public, like you said earlier, even laws can be recalled. If a law does not serve the purpose of the benefit of Nigerians or the citizens of a country, that law can be recalled. Laws can also be reviewed, not completely being recalled and abandoned, but reviewed, because it has to improve the economy. It has to improve the lives of the people. If a law does not improve the lives of the people, then of what essence is the law? So coming back to what Dr. Robo said in raising funds for this purpose, how do we get funds for cybersecurity? I would say it has to be done at an enterprise level. There has to be a form of business intelligence in raising funds like this. It can still be raised without being shown publicly or without being put in front of Nigerians that a 0.5% is being collected. Out of the various taxes and the various levies that Nigerians are paying, a portion has to be somehow voted for this purpose. Right, so that law, as it were, though it has been passed, has to be reviewed, because anything that does not serve the purpose of the citizenry would not benefit the country at large.
While we wait for a review, perhaps we should take a second look at funding. And as we do that, we can look at the work of the EFCC, which also has, as part of its core mandate, tackling cybercrime. In February, it reported arresting about 30 people for cyber-related criminal activity. In 2022, the EFCC reported that it convicted 2,800 persons for cyber crimes. And in the 2024 budget, the EFCC's proposed budget submitted to the National Assembly is about 76 billion naira. And the the Nigeria police is also, having some activity in that regard with tackling cyberbullying. So it would seem that, not seem now, there is some funding allocated to the security agencies for tackling cybercrime. Perhaps we should understand the intention of the Office of the NSA, which, according to the memo released by the CBN, is granted this responsibility of administering the funds that the banks have been directed to collect. So are we seeing a shift in responsibility you know, of this approach to tackling cybercrime, moving from the EFCC and the Nigeria Police Force to the NSA. Should we be exploring that point as well?
Yes, right. So the office of the NSA is more like the apex office when it comes to cybersecurity governance, risk management, and compliance. They advise all MDAs. They advise the presidency when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So as we have that of the EFCC, the police force, and every other MDs doing their bit, the NSA has the holistic approach to cybersecurity advisory. However, coming to the banking sector, because the NSA doesn't just oversee the operations of the banks. This is the first time we're even hearing it. The NSA oversees security operations all around the country. Anything that has to do with security, not just cybersecurity. So wherever funds have been allocated for the NSA to carry out their operations, even when it comes to on-ground security, they should look into that post. There is a security fund. There's a security vote that state governments pay. There are some other funding that comes into the NSA's post. So why can't we look into exploring all of those? I would carefully say that recovery of loot in the past, if we even want to ask questions, what have been done with those recoveries? We should start asking the right questions right now. The loot that we have been getting back in the past, what have been happening to those loot, those monies that we'll be recovering? What have been going on with those funds? Can a percentage be allotted for this cybersecurity issue? If we cannot explore that opportunity, can we look into other opportunities? I said a few minutes ago that this has to be done at an enterprise level. At an enterprise level, the big players in the economy can write off, I mean, how much is it? We can write off these funds and not push the burden down to the MSMEs.
Well, an important point to make there, either it's a collection of the funds or a review of the law in the first place. We hope that we've been able to explore the points as much as possible. But the conversation is ongoing, and of course, we'll return to it subsequently. At this point, we'd like to thank you very much, sirs. Mr. Jude Izinegbe, a digital transformation consultant. Izinegbe.
Ozinegbe.
Ozinegbe. Thank you for the correction. And thank you for your time on the program. We also had Dr. Bilyaminu Romo, who joined us via Zoom, a senior lecturer and computer science, University of East London. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And from cybersecurity, we switch gears to take a look at Rivers politics. That will be after this time out, and it promises to be another stimulating conversation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.